Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. I'm KP. Nick is here and attendance with me once more because today we're going to be going through our NXT Great American Bash reactions that took place this weekend in Atlanta, Georgia. So, a lot took place on this show. We're going to break everything down, go through all the action. How about we kick things off with our opening contest of the match, which saw Jordynne Evans going one-on-one with Jasper Troy. This has been the interesting build. Jasper Troy seemingly attacked Jordynne Evans out of nowhere. And, after that interaction, they've had a couple of interactions since then. Jordynne getting back up in the face of Jasper Troy, then just sort of like a bouncing off of one another. And for someone like Jordynne Evans, who is particularly bouncy, he threw himself into this matchup against Jasper Troy, as did Jasper, to be fair. And they put on a strong match to open the show. It's always difficult to open a show and to, get the crowd invested from the beginning. But Nick, were you invested with this match from the very, very start? Do you think it was the right call to open the show? And how do you think these guys got on with Jordynne Evans and Jasper Troy going one-on-one to begin things?
Well, for one, I thought at least I mentioned in my predictions, that I very much thought that Jasper Troy was the right person to go over here. Obviously, that didn't happen, and with this match starting off the show, I kind of had a feeling that would be the case. Having heels start off the show, winning usually isn't the way they go about it. But I will say, on a positive note, Jasper Troy absorbed a ton of offense in this one, like an incredible amount of offense. So I think that's good on Jasper Troy. What I wasn't a fan of was Jasper losing, as I kind of alluded to already. And then this whole contest ending with the roll up. This has clearly been a little bit personal. Jasper Troy having this vendetta against Jordynne for whatever reason. Haven't really touched on that, I think, too much, but maybe they will now. But to have that end on a roll up, isn't really ideal because the match was really good up until then. While I understand this finish protects Jasper more, obviously, I think Jordynne would have been just fine taking the loss here. So outside of the ending, I'm perfectly fine with this match. And I thought it was a pretty good bout. Gave this one an 8 out of 10.
So perhaps a little differently to maybe how I thought this one went down. I would agree with you that Jasper Troy probably was my pick to win. And I think we both mentioned that on the predictions video the other day. So yeah, it was quite the surprise having Jordynne win. It is Jasper's first PLE, so really can't get too sort of carried away with this loss. So I'm sure he'll bounce back, and we haven't seen the best of Jasper Troy by any means necessary just yet. What I will say is this match, I don't know if it really called to me as an opener for the show. It was a good contest, but I don't think this would be one that I'll ever think back and remember. Thinking to myself, Jasper Troy's NXT PLE debut against Jordynne Evans, what a match it was. It was incredible. I can't see myself thinking that, but I think there are moments of like a little bit of sloppiness during this contest, and I think maybe the stars sometimes did clash. I know a big guy does usually pretty well gel with someone who's high flying because their styles are so polar opposite that they work together really, really well. But I don't know, I found myself at this point, I found myself at points of this match where I didn't really think that was really working out too often. I gave it a 6.5 out of 10. I thought that as a show opener, there were other options on the card that I think would have been a much better choice to go with here. And yeah, I don't know, it was a fine match, but nothing that really sort of like called out to me. I thought it was actually, for NXT standards, it was quite a slow start to a PLE. Maybe it's just of how used I am to to previous opening contests or not, but I don't know. That was just my general take on this one. But it was a good match, just nothing standout is basically what I'm trying to say. But Jordynne Evans' win is huge for him. That pushes him off up to whatever's going to be next. Whether that is continuing with Jasper Troy, whether Jasper's done with Jordynne, obviously we have to wait and see. But what I will say is, it is a very big win for Jordynne Evans. Moving along into our next matchup of the night, Ruca. She would put her NXT North American Championship on the line against Izzi, Dame of the Culling. This would be a chance for her to retain her NXT Women's North American title. Tatum Paxley and Zarya would be pretty heavily influencing this matchup in parts, especially at the very beginning. And that would sort of like just be apparent throughout the remainder of the contest in little bits here and there. Nick, what did you make of Ruca's defense here against Izzi Dame? Her winning the matchup and retaining her title in the end. Do you think that was the right call? And that dynamic between Zarya, Tatum Paxley, as well as obviously Ruca and Izzi Dame, is very interesting. It's been built up highly in the past few weeks. Do you think it sort of like came to a head here, or do you reckon there's more still to be uncovered here from this?
Well, being the fact that Soul did retain here, I do think there's more to see and more to come. And that was clearly going to be a focus of this match, as obviously it started out with Tatum getting slapping Zarya, just as the bell rang. Definitely let us know where this match was headed. But yeah, I thought both women showed a bunch of resiliency here. And it felt like Izzy controlled the pace for a good majority of the match, or at least that's kind of how it felt to me. But as far as Soul goes, I feel like this was far from her best match. I don't know if it was that giant string hanging from her attire, or if this was, maybe her trying to conserve some energy. I know this is her second match, and she has, in as many days, and she has a third one at Evolution. So maybe that kind of is playing a part. But definitely not her best match. But yeah, and then 0 for 2 so far for me on the predictions. I thought Izzy, I just felt like it was Izzy's time. I felt like she'd been firing on all cylinders and had been picking up a bunch of momentum. And I felt like this was a good kind of something for the culling, ever since Sean lost his title back. It's been a while now. They haven't really done anything in terms of making that faction earn respect. I felt like this would be a good way to both help that faction of the culling and to kind of kickstart that Soul versus Arya thing that I feel like eventually we were going to get. And I feel like they could have played on that miscommunication more on the tag match at Evolution as well. But clearly WWE has other plans. But yeah, I thought the match was good. A bit sloppy in parts though, but I still did give this one a 7 out of 10. Just looking past those few parts as well. But how did you like this one, KP?
Yeah, I quite enjoyed it. I think that Izzy Dame looked great. For her biggest match, I think of her NXT career so far. Yeah, I don't think she really shied away from being in the spotlight here against someone like Ruca, who's obviously so very, very talented and consistent in her own right. But yeah, I think you mentioned the little tassels on Soul's attire. Yeah, a little bit awkward, right? Provides for some awkward moments during the match. I think there was a pinfall, especially from Izzy, where actually it went like wrapped around her head almost, wrapped around her neck. Just thought it was a little bit odd. That was always a very interesting choice, but yeah, I think besides that, the match was pretty fun. The dynamic between Zarya and Tatum on the outside, getting involved bits and bobs here and there. I think that added a little bit of depth to it. And yeah, Soul getting the win in the end, I wasn't like extremely surprised about, but I thought that Izzy Dame, really showed herself up here to be in that title picture and rightfully deserving of that opportunity. So yeah, I think both women had a good match. Like you said, it probably wasn't Soul's strongest performance, but I think it was still pretty good and pretty consistent from both women. I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. I think it was definite improvement of match quality from that of the first contest. But yeah, I thought it was a pretty solid matchup between both women, and Soul continues her good reign.
I was so focused on Sol Ruca. Obviously, you and I both rate her very highly. But yeah, I've clearly been, riding the momentum from Izzy Dane. And yeah, she didn't look out of place here at all. She looked fantastic. Clearly, I think she's headed for big things as well. So I just wanted to mention that because I felt like I focused too much on the negative. But yeah, Izzy looked incredible here.
Completely agree. Yeah, I absolutely 100% can vouch for that. I think yeah, she really sold herself very well here on the big stage. So looking forward to seeing more of her and these opportunities going down the line. Going forward onto our next matchup of the night, it would be a 1-on-1 matchup for the men's North American Championship. This would see Ethan Page put his gold on the line against Ricky Saints, two people who have been very, very aggressive with one another, very violent towards each other in this build that goes back quite a while now, all the way to WrestleMania weekend. And even just before that, obviously the build to up to that one as well. Yeah, months down the line, we're still doing this, and I am not sick of it whatsoever. It is fantastic between both men. They would put on a Falls Count Anywhere contest that would see carnage everywhere they went. They would go around the ringside area. They'd go into the backstage area where the fans are up by one of the bars. They'd go into like rooms backstage. We'd even encounter Jasper Troy on our way around. They go to the production area where they're by the cameras and stuff. They definitely utilize the stipulation of Falls Count Anywhere properly, which is nice to see. And yeah, I think Ethan Page getting the victory in this one was extremely important. I think I called for Ricky Saints to get the victory here, so I'm quite surprised about that. But what did you make of this one? Do you think that was the right call to have Ethan Page win here? Where does Ricky Saints go from here? But how did you find the matchup? Because I thought this was probably my match of the night. It was so much fun to watch, and like I said, they really utilized the stipulation. It was a lot of fun.
Well, first of all, 100% agreed on the match of the night. I don't know how you. Obviously, hindsight's 2020, but this match probably should have been the main event. But more on that kind of card layout later, I suppose. But yeah, this match was grueling, kind of as expected, and as I've been saying, Ricky Saints and Ethan Page, give us that for a year, and I don't think anyone's tired of it or upset about it. But this is truly, and you can tell me if I'm overreacting here because obviously it's still very fresh. But when you think of like all-time feuds in NXT, you think Jordynne Gargano and Ciampa, you think Bayley, Sasha Banks, Sami Zayn, Nakamura. But for me, this truly is feeling like it's going to be one of those all-time rivalries with Ricky Saints and Ethan Page. The only issue is I don't know how much time they have on NXT, but it feels like every time these guys get together, it's just pure gold. These guys just have a chemistry that is very literally unmatched by most people. So yeah, as I mentioned in the prediction video, I don't think it really mattered who won. I think both men are deserving, and I wasn't going to be mad no matter the outcome. But yeah, Ethan getting the win here, absolutely fine by me. An incredible match, and I think I think Ricky will eventually get it back. So maybe at the next PLE perhaps. But yeah, this was incredible. I gave this one a 9 out of 10. But yeah, give me more.
Snap, I would say to that then. I gave it a 9 out of 10 as well. Yeah, it was incredible. Both men really just completely left it all out there, right? It was interesting that little you know, that little moment between Jasper Troy and Ricky Saints, backstage, Jasper, lashing out on him, obviously still furious about his loss to Javon Evans earlier in the night. Just getting caught up in the action and, being at the wrong place at the wrong time, maybe. But more so for Ricky than it was for Jasper, actually, ironically enough. But yeah, it was a top contest, and like you said, their chemistry really is unmatched. It's something that they never fail to deliver on. Their matches are always really intriguing. There's a lot to them. It's not just the standard one-on-one. There's more to it than that. You feel it, and you enjoy it as well. And I think that every time they step in the ring with one another, it just it's sentiment. It cements like how much this title means to both of them, and that's what it's all about. Making it seem like it really is the biggest deal to both men. And I never once think that is not the case with either of these two. So yeah, cracking performance from both men. What a matchup, and just excited to see what the next chapter is, assuming we do get more chapters from these two. So yeah, I'm keen. I'm keen to see what's next. As for what's next on this show, we go into our NXT Championship matchup, and that would be a one-on-one contest between Yoshiki Inamura and the champion obafemi. So with this contest here, Josh Briggs would be the one that I think a lot of eyes would be on going into this matchup. Yoshiki saying that he was going to go into the match with honor. He was going to beat obafemi in the way that he wants to, not the way that he, that he can do. And he wanted to do things right by his standards. Josh Briggs, though, saying very, commandingly that he isn't a man of honor and that he wants to see Yoshiki Inamura win no matter what the cost is, and no matter what happens, no matter what he has to go through to do so. In order for him to get the win, as long as he does so, that's all that's important. So two very contrasting styles between both men, and that shaped up for a very interesting matchup between Yoshiki and Oba. But Nick, how did you make the dynamic between Josh Briggs and Yoshiki Inamura, the way it sort of impacted the matchup itself, and obafemi overcoming the complete chaos between both men, and eventually, holding up his goal at the end of the contest and still being the NXT champion once all was said and done?
Yeah, while this style of match, the big meaty men slapping meat kind of thing, is not typically my cup of tea. I had really high hopes for this one, as we both alluded to. We are big fans of Inamura and have thinks he has tons of potential, and this match didn't disappoint. While I understand the interference or whatnot from Josh Briggs. I didn't love it here. I would have preferred it just gone. If Oba's going to win, let him win clean. But I suppose this does protect Inamura a bit. I thought it made him look a little silly. I think. But regardless, couldn't quite get it done against the ruler, and I don't think either of us had thought this was going to be the match where Oba was overtaken. Maybe had high hopes that he could, but don't think it was quite the time yet. But regardless, I feel like this was a pretty good match. Actually, I'd say a great match. But yeah, like I said, never thought Inamura was actually going to win. I think the point of this match just being that he proves that he does belong, and then we see a bit of a fallout after the match where Yoshiki comes up to Oba, who's cutting more of a heelish promo saying, I am that guy. I am the ruler for a reason. And then, Inamura coming up and essentially apologizing for saying, I'm sorry, I fight with honor. That shouldn't have happened. And Briggs then comes up and, interrupts the interview and says, hey, I don't fight with honor, clearly heated. So interesting dynamic, I think. But Oba did say I would give you a rematch, referring to Inamura, but Briggs doesn't feel like he's in a position to wait. So interesting dynamic to say the least. But yeah, as far as this match, I think if it wasn't for the Ricky Saints, ethanpage, it still would have been my match of the night. Just an interesting dynamic between Yoshiki and Josh Briggs, to say the least. But yeah, this one delivered to my high expectations, regardless of that angle there. I don't think I gave the rating for this one already, but yeah, I did give this one 8.5 out of 10. I think trying to avoid to repeat myself, but the Briggs interference did bring it down just a notch for me. But otherwise, a really great contest.
So I think maybe contrasting opinions between yourself and myself in this one. But weirdly enough, I gave it a lower rating. I gave it an 8 out of 10. Let me explain where my head's at with this one. I thought that the interactions between Yoshiki and Josh were actually really interesting. I think that, with one man really just wanting his best bud to succeed and to win the title no matter what, measures he had to go through in order to do so. And Yoshiki being the one that wants to sort of do things properly and, actually to win it, with honor and pride and something that he can be proud of in the end. I just thought it made for a really interesting sort of like connection between both men. Obviously, with Oba being there, it's just witnessing the whole thing playing out. I didn't say I wouldn't say I found it funny as such, but I just found it really captivating, and that's kind of the opinion that I always have with Yoshiki Inamura. I'm always very captivated by his appearances, from his performances. And there's always a level of intrigue there, and this match really had that. So, as to where this dynamic goes between Josh and Yoshiki going forward, that will be very interesting. So I'm looking forward to seeing how they sort of translate this into the next week's NXT, and what the next step really is. Who is going to beat obafemi? I have absolutely no idea. Like you said, we didn't expect Yoshiki to be the one to do that here and now, but it does sort of make you ask, if there really is somebody in NXT right now that's capable of doing so. So, really fun match, 8 out of 10. Had a great time watching it, and just always interested in Yoshiki's matches, and I just think these two really gelled together very well. So, into our main event, that would be a women's tag team contest where we would see Fatal Influences, Jacy Jayne and Fallon Henley taking on Jordynne Grace and debutant Blake Monroe, her first match since joining up with WWE and NXT. And Blake would be looking to impress in the glamorous way that she knows how to do so. This would be quite a fun matchup between all four women. Lots and lots of tags. They got a very, very large, ratio of minutes for their match for the night. And I think everybody really sort of showcased what they can really do here. We even had a special guest, Masha Slamovich towards the end of the contest. Jasmine Nix was at ringside. There's a whole lot going on here, but what did you make, Nick, of Blake Monroe's debut? Herself and Jordynne Grace getting the victory here, but more of an interesting point here. We brought this up on our predictions video. We assumed that Fallon Henley would be taking the pinfall here, but actually it was Jacy Jayne. Blake Monroe pinning Jacy Jayne to win the matchup here. That for me was really interesting, and that makes me think towards Evolution. My mind is going crazy with thoughts and all sorts. But where's your head at with that? Because that is quite an interesting take.
Yeah, lots of interesting things about this match for me personally. I think obviously JC Jang being pinned was something I had on my list, and again, really makes your head turn. I think one of the most interesting things that happened yesterday was a Blake Monroe getting the pin. I think not so surprising, but over JC Jane. What does that mean for tomorrow? JC Jane is going to be heated about the whole thing. Um, maybe Blake Monroe won't actually be a face. Maybe she feels like she deserves this opportunity more than Jordynne Grace. I believe in AEW she was more of a heel, but don't quote me on that. But regardless, for the match itself, also I had noteworthy. I feel like this in the main event slot was surprising. I had just assumed that Yoshiki Obafemi would have been the main event. So to have them come on first was a surprise. And I feel like it was a pretty good match. I just feel like, in the grand scheme of things, I don't think this should have main evented. Um, disagree with me if you like there, but I just feel like it wasn't anything super noteworthy. I didn't feel like groundbreaking or anything. It just didn't feel like the NXT main event on a PLE. Granted, as you kind of alluded to earlier, we do have higher expectations for these NXT PLEs. So maybe that plays a part into it. But yeah, JC Jane getting the pin here. I don't. It certainly makes tonight's match more interesting. I will say that. Um, Now I feel like if JC does get pinned here, it really puts, for some reason, I don't know why, but it puts like a darker tone on the whole reign. To lose her last two matches as champion really does make her reign look pretty weak if she does end up losing tonight. So yeah, I'm not so sure anymore. I feel like maybe I need to change my predictions now. But yeah, it certainly has. I think we were going to be, you know, closely keeping our eye on tonight's match, anyways, regardless of the outcome here. But JT Jane taking the pin here is certainly interesting. Hey, and a positive for you. Maybe that just means Fallon Henley is, they felt like she had taken enough pins because they had big things in store for her. That could be a thing as well. But yeah, the interferences by Jasmine Nix, and then being nullified by Slamovich. I think that was a good call as well. Didn't want to see that play too big of a part in here. But yeah, I think Blake getting the win, that's obviously good for her. And that was obviously my first time seeing Blake in the ring. And I thought she more than delivered as well. But yeah, just in terms of the tag match itself, didn't quite have the main event feel, especially over a card that featured Inamura, obafemi, and then Ricky Sainz and ethanpage. But yeah, I really struggled with the rating on this one, but I did end up giving it a 7 out of 10. Obviously, I just felt like there were matches, and so I think maybe that played a part. Had this match gone, middle card or something, maybe I would have rated it higher. But because it was the main event, I feel like I was a little harsher on it than maybe I would have been otherwise.
I can completely understand everything that you just said there. I don't really disagree with absolutely anything. I think when it comes to these women and what they bring to the division of NXT, there's always cases to put them in the main event. But with this particular card and just the way that this matchup turned out, I do think they sort of messed up a little bit here. I would agree with you. I don't think this should have been the main event match. I think you could say obafemi and Yoshiki and Inamura, like you mentioned, could have been the main event, based on how big it is for the NXT Championship. It makes sense. ethanpage and Ricky Sainz, based on the match quality, I think that was the best match of the night. That could have been main event. So yeah, this was a very interesting choice, but yeah, with JC taking the pinfall, it's a head scratcher. It makes you think to Evolution. It makes you think, could something actually be happening here where JC retains, or is something different going to take place with a Blake Monroe, with a Fallon Henley, or whatever? I don't know. Like, I think there are many sort of avenues that we can actually look down now. So as to which one we end up going down will be quite interesting to figure out. But yeah, it definitely makes you think more about it, and that's what I'm doing right here, right now, in this very moment. I enjoyed the match. I thought it was good. I thought Blake looked great. Jordynne strong as ever. JC and Fallon, linking together very well for the majority of the contest. Masha getting involved to nullify Jasmine. Yeah, I think this match had a lot of stuff going on, and it was good. But main event wise, not so much. I gave it a 7.5 out of 10, which is good. That's not a bad rating, but I have given at least 2 matches on this card higher than that. So yeah, I think it's just one of the situations. But yeah, Blake looked great in her debut, and can't take that away from her, really, to be fair. As for the show as a whole, I I had a great time watching it. I thought it was good. There were some great matches on the card. I think especially ethanpage, Ricky Saints, and Femi, Yoshiki, and Inamura, my favorite too. We even had the contract signing with Joe Hendry and Trick Williams and Mike Santana for the TNA for the World Championship. That's coming up at Slammiversary. Dark State would attack Joe Hendry and Mike Santana after that as well. So yeah, we also had that also as a segment as well. I don't know if you want to maybe touch over that in a moment, Nick, with your summary as to what you thought about it. But I think the show was pretty good. What did you make of the show as a whole, and especially all the matches that we just saw, but as well as that contract signing too?
Yeah, I think as a whole, again, main event, you hate to see a finish like that, you in terms of just not really delivering to the quality of a main event. But overall, I think our ratings are pretty similar. Mine averaged out to a 7.9, so an 8 out of 10 for a PLE NXT. Yeah, certainly nothing terrible there. 8 out of 10 is pretty good. NXT standards, I think, it was pretty good. The contract signing, yeah, I didn't think it was anything groundbreaking by any means. It was cool to see Trick get thrown through the table, as we mentioned on our predictions video. Who gets thrown through the table and how long does it take? It did wait till the end of the segment at least, so there is that. And I think it was Corey that said something about maybe we can do DocuSign next time to prevent another table loss. Thought that was great. But yeah, then Dark State coming in, making their presence known in the never-ending, Dark State still around, but where are they? Who do they attack? Storyline. But yeah, curious to get just because I feel like, and maybe that's the point. Thinking of it more here, the closing, the main event, obviously not living up to our standards of what a main event should be, especially for NXT. Maybe the whole point was to sit here and make us think about Jacy Jayne and what the outcome of that match is going to be. Because you asked me yesterday and you asked me today, I gave you two completely different answers, and I think you kind of hit on that. Was I want Jordynne Grace to win. Obviously, I think that's been made apparent. But I think JC's going to keep it now because I don't think she's going to be booked that week as a champion, losing 2 nights in a row. It just doesn't feel right to me. But yeah, overall, I felt like this was a pretty good PLE. 8 out of 10, pretty good.
Yeah, very close to me, and I can completely understand why. I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. Yeah, the contract signing, yeah, those tables, they always get put through, and it was only a matter of time before Joe and Mike teamed up to put Trick through it. But yeah, heating up towards Slammiversary there. A couple of TNA champions appearing on this NXT Great American Bash. Obviously, cements the relationship the two shows have together at the moment. And yeah, I just think that it is a very interesting scenario with Jacy Jayne, especially going out of this one. That's my biggest talking point going into Evolution tonight, as things stand. So yeah, I think we both got our heads rightfully, focused on that, and how different now we're thinking, things could possibly turn out being. So that's a real head scratcher. It's definitely a turn of the tables there. So we'll see how things go, and I'm looking forward to Evolution nonetheless, with the ladies, getting the chance to showcase what they can do. But for now, guys, this has been everything to do with the NXT Great American Bash. All the matches discussed, everything that took place, our opinions, reactions, whatnot. It was a good show, and yeah, we now go on to the build towards our next NXT show. But thank you very much, everybody, tuning on into here with The Push with Nick and KP. If you liked what we put out here, then please consider hitting a like on this video, subscribing to our channel to keep up with future releases featuring Evolution review coming up later on. And also Saturday night's main event reactions as well, very close to this one as well. Also, let us know in the comments what you thought, whether you agree, disagree with anything that we've said here today. We'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think the landscape of NXT is right now, and if you think we're going in a good direction or not. But for now, this has been The Push with Nick and KP, and we'll see you all in the next one. Thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you next time.